The marketplace was silent except for the sound of heavy boots. Lanterns swung from crooked poles, throwing shadows across the stone road. The night was thick, and most people had gone home, but a crowd had gathered around one corner of the square. In the middle of that circle knelt a woman, her arms wrapped around a small boy. Her clothes were torn, her face pale, but her eyes burned with fear and desperation. The guards towered over her, aliens with scaled skin and cruel eyes. They shouted about debts unpaid, about punishment that must be delivered. The boy trembled in her arms, no older than 6 years, clutching her tightly. The woman's voice broke as she begged, "Please, not him, punish me. Not my son." Her words echoed in the cold air, carried by the stillness of the night. The crowd whispered but did nothing. Some turned away, ashamed. While others watched with cold eyes, the guards laughed, finding amusement in her suffering. They raised their stun rods, sparks crackling at the tips, ready to strike the boy. The mother pressed him to her chest, her body shaking, her voice desperate. "I will take it, all of it. Just leave him alone," she cried again. And that was the moment a human stepped forward. He had been leaning quietly against a wall, half hidden in the shadows. A traveler, a stranger in this alien town. His clothes were plain, his boots dusty from the road, but his eyes were sharp, and they locked onto the scene with fire. The guards sneered when they noticed him. "A human? Stay out of this, outsider," one spat. But the man didn't move away. He walked closer, his steps steady. The crowd shifted, whispering louder now. It was rare for humans to interfere in alien matters. Rarer still to challenge guards. The woman looked up, tears streaking her dirt-stained cheeks. Her lips parted as if to beg him to leave, to not risk himself. But the human shook his head slightly, his gaze fixed on the guards. His voice was calm but carried strength. "Hurting a child will not pay your debt," he said. The guards burst into laughter. "What do you know of our laws, human?" one mocked. "This wretch owes more than she can ever repay, and punishment must be given." The human's jaw tightened, his eyes flicking to the boy who clung to his mother's chest. The boy's small eyes met his, wide and afraid, and something inside the man hardened. He stepped closer, until he stood between the mother and the guards. The alien soldiers shifted, surprised by his boldness. "Step aside," they growled, raising their rods higher. But the human didn't step aside. Instead, he planted his boots firmly on the ground. "Then punish me instead," he said quietly. The crowd gasped. The mother let out a small cry. Clutching her boy tighter, she shook her head, whispering, "No, no, please don't." But the man didn't turn back. His eyes stayed on the guards. They saw no fear in him, only a cold determination that unsettled them. The guards growled, ready to strike. The leader sneered. "You dare stand against us for this worthless woman?" The human's answer was firm. "No child deserves cruelty, and no mother should beg for mercy like this." The silence in the square grew heavier. The people in the crowd held their breath. Some looked away, afraid of what was about to happen. Others leaned forward, caught in the strange tension. A single human standing against armored alien guards. The leader raised his hand, signaling the others. Sparks hissed at the tips of the stun rods. The woman cried out again, "Please stop. He will kill you." But the human only glanced back once, his eyes softer as they met hers. His lips moved in a whisper she barely heard. "Protect your son." And then the first guard stepped forward, rod raised high. The crowd gasped, the mother screamed. The boy buried his face into her chest, and the human braced himself, fists clenched, his eyes never leaving the enemy. The night air seemed to freeze. Every heart in that square waited for the first strike, and in that terrible stillness, the thought burned in the mother's mind. Why would a stranger risk his life for them? The whip of sparks came down, and the story of that night truly began. The stun rod cracked through the air, glowing with blue sparks. The human's hand shot up and caught the weapon before it struck. The guard froze, shocked, and the crowd gasped. The electric current hissed around his arm, but the man held on, refusing to let go. His grip was like iron, his eyes cold and unshaken. The alien soldier snarled and tried to pull back, but the human twisted sharply. The rod flew from the alien's hands and clattered to the ground. The guard stumbled back, staring at the unarmed man in disbelief. A murmur rippled through the watching crowd. Whispers of human strength and madness filled the air. The leader growled, his scaled face twisting in anger. "You dare raise your hand against the law?" he thundered. The human stood tall, not raising his voice. But his words carried across the square. "I don't care about your law if it demands cruelty to a child." The woman's heart pounded in her chest. Her hands clutched her son tightly as she stared at the stranger. Her mind screamed at him to stop, to run, to save himself. But her lips would not form the words. Something in his calm voice silenced her, filling her with a strange, aching hope. The guards stepped forward as one, their weapons humming with energy. The crowd shrank back, afraid to be caught in the storm. But the human didn't move away. He took another step closer. The boy peeked out from his mother's arms and saw the man standing like a shield. For the first time in his short life, the child saw someone unafraid of the guards. "Punishment must be carried out," the leader hissed. "Then let it be carried out on me," the human replied. The silence that followed was heavy, almost unbearable. The crowd held its breath. No one daring to speak, the mother's tears ran hot down her face. Unable to understand him, the first guard lunged, his rod sparking bright. The human sidestepped swiftly, his body moving with the speed of someone who knew how to fight. He grabbed the guard's wrist, pulled, and sent the alien sprawling onto the ground. The rod rolled away, its sparks dying in the dirt. The other guards hesitated, confused by the sudden defeat of one of their own. The human bent and picked up the rod. Holding it out at arm's length, it buzzed and crackled, the blue light dancing over his fingers, but he didn't use it. He dropped it back to the ground and stood empty-handed. His eyes scanned the ring of soldiers, calm and steady. "I don't need your weapon to stand against you," he said. The crowd erupted in murmurs, louder now. Some whispered admiration, others fear. The mother stared at him, her heart torn between dread and awe. She had never seen anyone stand against the guards. She had never seen anyone so fearless. The commander bared his sharp teeth in a cruel smile. "You think you are strong, human?" he sneered. "You think you can protect them from me?" He lifted his hand and the remaining guards surged forward. Weapons ready. The air crackled with sparks, the smell of ozone burning sharp. The human lowered his stance, his fists clenched. The first strike came at him fast, but he ducked low, swept his leg, and the alien soldier hit the ground hard. Another came from behind, swinging the rod. The human turned, caught the arm, and shoved the soldier into his comrade. The crowd gasped again, louder this time. The boy's small eyes widened with wonder. His mother pressed her hand over his head, torn between shielding him from the violence and letting him see hope. For the first time in years, she felt something she had forgotten: faith. The guards regrouped, growling in frustration. The leader's eyes narrowed, realizing this was no ordinary traveler. There was something in the way he moved. Not wild, not reckless, but trained, controlled, as if every motion carried weight. The commander raised his hand again, but this time he did not strike. He studied the human with a calculating gaze. "You could walk away," he said, his voice low but dangerous. "This is not your fight. This is not your debt." The human straightened slowly, breathing hard. But his voice was calm when he answered, "I walk away. And you destroy a child's life, I stay." "And maybe I can change it," the commander hissed, scales rippling. "You are a fool." "Maybe," the human replied. "But I am not cruel." The crowd shifted, the murmurs growing louder now. Some aliens were nodding, others frowning in silence. The woman's chest heaved with heavy breaths. Her son whispered against her ear, "Mother, he is not like them." The tension stretched tight, every moment heavy with danger. The commander's tail lashed against the ground. Sparks flying from his soldiers' rods, the woman's heart thundered. She knew one wrong move would mean death. But still, the human stood between them, defiant, steady, unbroken. And when the commander finally lifted his hand to signal the next attack, the human took a single step forward, his voice ringing out like steel. "Then punish me if you dare." The night froze. The crowd silent once more, every eye fixed on the stranger who had chosen to stand. And for the first time in that dark square, it was not the guards who looked powerful. It was the human who faced them without fear. The square was tense, filled with silent eyes. The guards circled the human like wolves, their rods glowing brighter. The commander raised his clawed hand, and the soldiers rushed forward. The human exhaled slowly, his muscles tightening. He knew this would not be easy, but his heart had already chosen. He would not step aside. The first soldier lunged, swinging his rod at the man's head. The human ducked low and slammed his shoulder into the alien's chest. The guard staggered back, crashing into the crowd. Another came from the side, sparks crackling as the rod cut through the air. The human twisted sharply, his boot striking the alien's knee. The guard cried out, Falling to the ground, the crowd gasped, their whispers rising like the wind. No one had ever seen a human fight this way. Humans were weaker than most alien races, or so they believed. Yet here he was, moving with speed and strength that seemed impossible. The woman held her son close, her eyes wide with shock. Every strike he made was sharp, controlled, and sure. 2 more soldiers attacked together, one from the front, one from behind. The human dropped low, sweeping his leg. Sending one crashing down, he rolled to the side, grabbed the other's arm, and twisted. The weapon clattered to the ground, sparks scattering. The human kicked it away and stood tall again. The commander's smile faded. He narrowed his eyes, realizing this was no reckless traveler. This human had training, real training, the kind that spoke of battles fought long ago. The crowd murmured louder, some even stepping closer. They had never seen guards struggle like this before. They had never seen courage shine so bright against cruelty. The boy peeked from his mother's arms, his small hands gripping her dress tightly. His eyes followed the stranger, and for the first time in his life, he saw hope. He whispered softly, "Mother, he's winning." Her throat tightened, tears burning her eyes. "Yes," she whispered back, though her heart still trembled. Another guard roared and charged, swinging wildly. The human sidestepped and struck his elbow into the alien's ribs. The guard wheezed, falling hard. The square erupted with gasps again. The whispers grew into shouts, some cheering softly, others looking around nervously, afraid of what the commander might do next. The commander finally stepped forward, his scaled body gleaming under the lantern light. He was taller than the rest, broader, with sharp teeth that glimmered when he spoke. "You fight well, human," he growled, his voice deep and cruel. "But do you think you can stand against me?" The human breathed hard but did not waver. "I will stand against anyone who harms a child," he answered. The crowd fell silent again. The commander's eyes narrowed, his tail lashing against the ground. The sound of stone cracking echoed through the square. The commander drew his own weapon. It was larger than the stun rods, heavy and sharp, a mix of a blade and a staff, glowing faintly with alien energy. The air grew heavier, the tension pressing down on everyone's chest. The woman held her son tighter, whispering, "Don't look. Don't watch," but the boy couldn't look away. The human straightened, his hands empty. Yet his stance was calm. His eyes locked on the commander. The crowd whispered, "He's unarmed." But there was something strange in his gaze. Something steady, something unbreakable. The commander charged, his weapon cutting through the air. The crowd screamed. The woman cried out. The human stepped aside just enough, the blade slicing past his shoulder. He grabbed the commander's arm, twisting with all his strength. The weapon sparked as it hit the ground. The commander snarled, spinning back with a vicious tail strike. The human rolled away, barely escaping the heavy blow. The square shook with the sound of the fight. The guards stood frozen, afraid to interrupt their commander. The people leaned forward, unable to turn away. It was no longer a simple punishment. It had become something larger, something none of them had seen before. The human's movements grew faster, sharper. Every strike of the commander's weapon met with quick reflexes. Every heavy blow dodged, every opening seized. The mother's heart pounded as she watched. She saw the truth now. This man was no ordinary traveler. There was strength inside him, strength hidden deep. The commander swung again, sparks flying. The human caught the weapon with both hands for a moment. The square glowed with light as the alien energy crackled. But the human did not let go. His arms shook with effort, but his eyes never blinked. With a sudden roar, he wrenched the weapon free and threw it to the ground. The crowd erupted in chaos, some shouting, some cheering. The commander stumbled back, his eyes blazing with fury. No one had ever disarmed him before. No one had ever made him look weak before. The human stood tall, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. But his eyes were still steady, his voice firm. "I don't fight for myself," he said, his words carrying across the square. "I fight for them." He pointed to the mother and her son, trembling in the corner, the boy's eyes filled with tears, his small voice whispering, "He's protecting us." "Mother," the woman pressed her lips together, her hands trembling, her heart ached with guilt and awe. Why would a stranger risk so much for them? The commander roared, his fury shaking the air. "This is not over," he shouted. The crowd trembled, but the human did not. He took one slow step forward, and the commander, for the first time, took a step back. The square was filled with heavy silence. Lanterns swayed in the night breeze. their dim light falling on broken weapons scattered across the stones. Several guards groaned on the ground, beaten and shamed. The human stood tall, chest rising and falling with slow breaths. His hands were cut and bruised, his shirt torn at the shoulder. But his eyes were steady. The crowd had changed. At first they had only watched, cold and silent. But now whispers of awe moved through them. Some murmured about human strength, others about human madness. And the mother, holding her child close, could not look away. Her heart trembled with fear, but also with something she could not name. Hope. The commander, tall and scaled, bared his sharp teeth in a snarl. His pride had been wounded, his soldiers defeated. But he was not ready to admit loss. Slowly, he lifted his clawed hand, signaling silence from his men. His deep voice rolled across the square. "Low and cruel, you fight well, human," he said. "Better than any of your kind I've seen." The crowd listened, every ear strained to catch his words. The commander's eyes gleamed as he stepped closer. "But let us see if your courage remains when faced with true choice." The human tilted his head slightly, calm though his body ached. "What choice?" he asked, his voice steady. The commander spread his arms wide as if showing the crowd. "This woman owes a debt she cannot repay. Her punishment is law," he hissed. "But you can take her place," the mother gasped, clutching her son tighter, her knees weakened, her voice shaking. No, don't listen to him," she whispered. Her son looked up at her with wide eyes, tears shining. The human's face did not change, but his eyes grew darker. The commander's smile widened, cruel and sharp. 10 lashes of the electro whip, he said. "And her child goes free." The crowd stirred uneasily. Some flinched at the mention of the whip. Its strikes were known to tear skin, to burn with pain that left scars for life. The mother's legs gave way and she sank to the ground. Her voice broke as she cried, "Please, no, not you." Her son clung to her neck, sobbing, but the human only looked at the commander. "And if I refuse?" he asked quietly. The commander's tail lashed against the stones. "Then the boy suffers in her place," he growled. Gasps filled the square, the crowd shuddered. Even hardened merchants turned their faces away. The cruelty of the offer cut deep into the night air. The mother screamed, "No! Take me instead!" Her voice broke with desperation, but the commander ignored her. His eyes stayed locked on the human, watching every flicker of his face. The human's fists clenched at his sides. He looked back once, just once, at the mother and child. The boy's small face streaked with tears, his mother's broken plea. Then he turned back to the commander, his jaw firm. "I will take her place," he said, his voice calm, steady. The square erupted with shouts, some gasping in disbelief, others murmuring awe. The mother shook her head violently, crawling forward on her knees. "No, please, don't do this. You'll die." Her hands reached for him, but the guards shoved her back. The commander's smile widened, though his eyes flickered with something else. Unease. He had not expected the man to accept so easily. Still he raised his hand, and a soldier brought forward the dreaded whip. It was long, lined with glowing coils that hummed with electric power. Every swing could shatter bone. Every strike could tear muscle. The human stood without chains. Without resistance, he did not kneel, he did not beg. Instead, he straightened his back and spread his arms slightly. His voice was steady when he spoke. "Do what you must. But remember this." He looked around at the crowd, at every face staring back at him. No child should ever suffer for the sins of the parent. The words struck like thunder. The crowd fell silent, hearts shaken. The mother wept openly, clutching her boy to her chest. The commander growled, gesturing to the guard. "Begin," he ordered. The first lash cracked across the human's back. The sound split the air, a mixture of whip and lightning. His body jolted, but he did not fall. The crowd flinched, the mother screamed. Her son buried his face in her arms. Sobbing, the second lash came, harder. His skin burned, blood rising in streaks across his back. Still, he did not cry out, his teeth clenched. His eyes closed for only a breath, but when he opened them again, they blazed with defiance. The guards muttered in disbelief. The crowd shifted uneasily. Whispers of "he endures" spread through the silence. The mother shook her head, tears pouring down her cheeks. She pressed her son's face against her chest so he would not see. The third lash fell, the fourth, the fifth, each one tearing deeper, each one crackling with power. Yet still the human stood, his body trembling but unbroken. By the sixth, the crowd had fallen into stunned silence. By the seventh, even the commander's smile had faded. By the 8th, some aliens in the crowd looked away. Ashamed by the 9th, the mother's voice had gone hoarse from crying, and by the 10th, the whip cracked but the human remained standing. His shirt was shredded, his back a map of blood and fire, but his eyes lifted, staring straight into the commander's. His lips moved, his voice low but clear. "You cannot break me." The square froze. The commander's hand lowered slowly, his expression dark. The guard holding the whip looked shaken. The crowd's whispers swelled again, this time with awe instead of fear. And the mother, on her knees in the dirt, held her son close and wept, because she finally understood. This stranger's heart could never be cruel, not even under the lash. The square smelled of blood and burning ozone. The human's back was raw, his shirt in tatters, but still he stood tall, his head raised, his eyes burning with quiet fire. The whip dangled from the guard's trembling hands, its coil still glowing faintly, and the crowd, once silent, now whispered with awe. "He took 10 lashes," one alien muttered. "No one survives that without screaming," another whispered. But the human had not cried out, not even once. Every strike had been met with silence, with defiance, and that silence was louder than any scream could have been. The commander's jaw tightened. His pride stung deeper than the man's wounds. This was supposed to be a lesson in cruelty, a reminder to all that the law was above mercy. Yet instead the crowd looked at the human, not with pity, but with respect, and that respect unsettled him. The mother fell to her knees, sobbing into her son's hair. Her hands trembled as she clutched him. She wanted to run to the stranger, to shield him, but fear chained her legs to the ground. Her boy, however, wriggled free. He stepped forward, small hands clenched. Tears still on his cheeks, he looked up at the human, his voice breaking. "Why? Why would you hurt yourself for us?" The human turned his head slightly. His lips curved into the faintest smile despite the blood on them. His voice was rough but steady. "Because no child should suffer for the sins of others." The boy's small chest heaved. He stumbled back to his mother, his face buried against her. Her tears only grew, her heart shattering with every word. This man had chosen pain over watching her child suffer, and that choice carved into her soul deeper than any blade. The commander hissed, his voice sharp as steel. "Do not be fooled, crowd. This human is nothing but a fool." But the words rang hollow, because even his own guards avoided his gaze. Even they felt the weight of what had just happened. The human swayed slightly on his feet, his body screaming with pain. The mother's heart clenched. She whispered under her breath, "He'll fall." But then she saw something else, a strength that did not come from muscle or bone. It came from his will, from something invisible and unbreakable. The commander, anger boiling in his chest, stepped forward. "If you are so strong, human, then prove it," he sneered. He drew his blade staff again, its edge glowing with alien light. The crowd gasped, some shouting in protest, "Enough! He has taken enough!" But the human raised his hand, silencing them. His voice, though cracked and rough, carried through the night. "If you want to fight me, I will fight," he said. "But know this. I will not fight for pride." He turned his eyes toward the mother and her boy. "I fight only for them." The crowd trembled, the words sinking deep. Some aliens lowered their heads, shame filling their hearts. Others stared at the human with something close to reverence. The commander bared his teeth. But for a moment even he felt unease. The mother, unable to stay silent, cried out, "Stop! Please stop this. He has done enough." Her voice cracked, filled with desperation, but the human only gave her a small nod. As if to say, "Trust me," the commander raised his weapon high. But before he could strike, an old alien voice from the crowd shouted, "This is not justice. This is cruelty." The crowd stirred, more voices rising. "He took the lashes. He paid the price. Why punish him more?" The commander roared, his tail striking the stones, silencing them again. "This is my law," he bellowed, but the human's voice cut through, calm but powerful. "No. This is your pride." The crowd gasped, the words daring, dangerous, but they struck like arrows in the silence. Because everyone knew it was true, this was no longer about debt. It was about the commander's wounded pride. The human, blood dripping down his back, stepped forward slowly. Each step echoed against the stones. The commander lifted his weapon, but his hand shook. For the first time, fear whispered at the edge of his pride. The mother clutched her son tightly. Her lips moved in silent prayer. though she had never believed in such things before. Her heart begged for him to live, begged for mercy. And then she realized something strange. She was not praying for herself, nor for her child. She was praying for him. The boy, peeking from her arms, whispered softly, "Mother, he's our protector." Her tears fell harder because she knew her son was right. The commander's chest heaved with fury. He swung the weapon down with a roar. The crowd screamed. The mother cried out. But the human raised his hand and caught the blade with his bare palm. The alien energy hissed, burning into his skin. Blood dripped from his fingers, but his eyes never left the commander's. Gasps echoed like thunder. Even the guard stumbled back in disbelief. The commander tried to pull the weapon free, but it did not move. The human's grip was unyielding, and in that terrible moment everyone understood. This man's strength was not just of body, it was of heart. It was the strength of someone who would endure anything for others. The crowd murmured louder now, not whispers of fear but of respect. Some even bowed their heads as if before something sacred. The mother's breath caught in her throat. Her son whispered again, this time with certainty, "He cannot be broken." And for the first time in the commander's life, he felt the sting of something worse than defeat. He felt the sting of mercy given by a human. The night after the whipping was quiet, but the marketplace was not the same. The human had walked away bloody and scarred, yet unbroken, and the memory of his defiance clung to every stone, every whisper in the air. Rumors spread quickly through the alien town. Some said he was no ordinary man, that the lashes should have killed him, or at least left him broken. But he had stood tall, silent, and strong. Others whispered that old stories were true, that humans carried something unseen inside them, a fire that no whip or blade could extinguish. The commander hid in his quarters, fuming. His pride was wounded deeper than his skin. He had tried to break the human in front of all, and instead the human had broken him. He told himself it was only chance, only stubbornness. But even he could not silence the unease in his chest. The mother sat in a small corner hut, her son curled against her lap, sleeping at last. But she could not close her eyes. She stared at the bandaged man sitting across from her. The human leaned against the wall, shirt off, his back wrapped in strips of cloth she had torn from her own clothes. Every mark burned into him like a story carved in flesh. She whispered, her voice trembling, "Why did you do it? Why take my place?" The human's eyes opened slowly. They were tired but still steady. He answered simply, "Because your boy deserves to grow without fear." Her lips trembled, tears filling her eyes again. "You don't even know us," she said. He looked at her for a long moment before replying, "I didn't need to." The words pierced her heart because in all her years, no one, human or alien, had ever spoken with such weight. Her son stirred in his sleep, clutching her hand tighter. She brushed his hair, whispering softly, "Protector." Outside, the streets buzzed with restless voices. Aliens gathered in groups, speaking in low tones. "Did you see him stand?" He caught the commander's blade. No one has done that before. Some were afraid, whispering that a human with such strength would bring trouble. But others spoke with respect. Perhaps even admiration. Old merchants recalled tales from long ago, of humans who had stood against impossible odds, of humans who had turned weakness into strength. Maybe the stories were true, one elder said. Maybe humans are not weak at all, only different. By morning, the whispers had spread beyond the town. Travelers carried the story down roads and across rivers, and slowly, the tale of the human who endured spread like fire in dry grass. The commander knew this. He slammed his clawed hand against the wall of his quarters. Cracking stone. "This cannot continue," he hissed. If the people began to see hope in a human, his power would unravel, and that was something he could not allow. Meanwhile, the mother cleaned the human's wounds as best she could. Her hands were gentle, though they shook. Each scar made her ache. She whispered, "You should rest." The human shook his head slightly. "Rest can wait, your safety cannot." Her eyes filled with tears again. But she said nothing. The boy woke, blinking sleepily. He crawled across the floor and sat beside the man. His small hand reached out, brushing against the bandages. "You hurt because of me," he said softly. The human looked down, his voice calm. "No, I hurt because of them, not you." The boy frowned, his small chest tight with emotion. Then he whispered, "You're my hero." The word struck the human harder than any whip. For a moment he looked away, his jaw clenched, his breath unsteady. He had fought for many things in his life, but no one had ever called him that before. Later that day, the market stirred again. When the human walked into the square, every eye followed him. Some nodded in respect. Others lowered their gaze. Even the guards hesitated when they saw him. Their hands tightened on their weapons, but none dared step forward. The mother walked behind him with her son. She felt the stares, but for the first time, she did not feel shame. For the first time, she felt pride. The human had given her that. Though she had not asked for it, whispers turned into greetings. Some aliens offered bread, others water. The human accepted little, only enough to share with the boy. He never took more than he needed, and this simple act made the whispers grow louder. Mercy, they said. He fights, but he also forgives. That night, under the dim stars, the mother asked again, "Do you not hate them after what they did to you?" The human's voice was quiet. Hate changes nothing. Mercy can change everything. Her breath caught in her chest. She stared at him, unable to understand, but deep inside, a seed of belief began to grow. The commander, watching from the shadows, clenched his claws. He saw how the people looked at the human, not with fear but with hope, and he knew. Hope was more dangerous than any blade. The human did not see himself as powerful, but the people began to see something else. A strength not of muscle or weapon, but of spirit, of endurance, of mercy. And that unseen power was beginning to spread. Like light breaking through the cracks of a long, dark night, the sun rose slowly over the alien town. Its pale light stretched across the marketplace, touching the broken stones where blood had fallen the night before. But the square felt different now. The air was no longer heavy with fear. It carried something new, something the people had not felt in years. It carried hope. The human walked through the streets with slow steps. His back was wrapped in bandages, his movements stiff with pain. But his eyes were steady, his presence strong. The mother walked beside him, her son holding both their hands. The boy's small steps matched his eyes full of pride. The townsfolk watched as they passed. Some bowed their heads, others whispered. But the whispers were no longer about debts or punishment. They were about the man who had endured pain for a child that was not his own. They were about the human who could not be broken. The commander stood in the square, waiting. His soldiers formed a line behind him, their weapons ready, but even they shifted uneasily. Because the night before they had seen what no one could deny. They had seen mercy stand taller than cruelty. They had seen endurance turn into power. The crowd gathered, filling every corner. Merchants, workers, old ones, and children pressed close, their voices low, but their eyes fixed on the human. The commander raised his clawed hand for silence. "This ends today," he declared, his voice hard. "No human will decide our laws." The human stopped a few steps away. He did not reach for a weapon. His hands hung loosely at his sides. His voice, though tired, carried through the air like iron. "I am not here to decide your laws," he said. "I am here to show you what cruelty cannot take away." The commander's lips pulled back in a snarl. "And what is that?" he hissed. The human's eyes flicked toward the mother and her son. Then back to the commander. "Choice," he said simply. "The choice to be better, the choice to show mercy, the choice to protect instead of destroy." The words rippled through the crowd like a wave. Some aliens lowered their heads, their scales gleaming in the morning light. Others clenched their fists, shame filling their hearts. Because deep down they knew he was right. The commander growled, his tail striking the ground. "You think words make you strong? You think mercy makes you feared?" The human shook his head slowly. "Mercy does not make me feared," he said. "It makes me free." The silence that followed was heavy. The mother pressed her son closer, her breath caught in her throat. The commander raised his weapon, fury blazing in his eyes. "Then you will die free," he snarled. The soldiers tensed, the crowd gasped, but before the commander could strike, the boy's voice rang out high and trembling. "Stop," he shouted, his small arms spread wide. He stepped in front of the human, tears running down his face. "You can't hurt him."
"He's our protector!"
The square froze. The commander stared down at the trembling child. The crowd held its breath, and in that moment, something broke, not in the human, but in the people. Voices rose, louder this time. "No more." Someone shouted, "He took her punishment." Another cried, "Let them go." Enough cruelty. The commander turned, eyes wide, as the crowd stepped forward. Not with weapons, not with violence, but with unity, one by one. They moved closer, surrounding the human. the mother and her son. The commander's chest heaved with fury. His weapon shook in his hands. But when he looked into the faces of his own people, he saw no fear, only defiance. And for the first time he realized he had lost. The human placed a hand gently on the boy's shoulder, pulling him back. He stepped forward. Closer to the commander, his voice was calm, steady, but it carried the weight of all that had happened. "You can strike me down," he said, "but know this, you will not break me, and you will not break them." The commander's jaw clenched, his claws digging into the weapon's hilt, but he did not move. The crowd's voices grew louder, pressing against him like a storm, and slowly, with a snarl of frustration, he lowered his weapon. He turned away, spitting on the ground. "Leave," he growled. "Take them and leave." The people erupted in shouts, not of anger, but of relief. The guards lowered their weapons. Shame burning in their eyes, the mother fell to her knees, clutching her son, tears spilling freely. The boy clung to her, then turned and hugged the human tightly. "You saved us," he whispered. The human knelt slowly, his body aching. He placed a hand gently on the boy's head. "No," he said softly. "You saved me." The mother looked at him. Her lips trembling, she whispered, "We have nothing to give you, nothing to repay what you've done." The human shook his head. "You owe me nothing," he said. "Just live free. Live without fear." The crowd parted as they walked away. Some reached out to touch the human's arm in quiet respect. Others bowed their heads, and slowly a chant began. Soft at first, then louder. "Protect her. Protect her. Protect her." The human did not look back, but the sound followed him. The sound of a people who had seen something greater than cruelty. The sound of hearts changed by a single choice. As the mother and her son walked beside him, the woman whispered almost to herself, "Your heart could never be cruel." And the boy smiled, his small hand gripping the human's tightly, because now he believed it too.